It's rarely a big mistake that causes people to fall behind. It's small habits running on autopilot. Think of someone who manages money carefully. They save part of each paycheck. They avoid debt. They follow advice that worked years ago. On paper, everything looks fine. Over time, the math stops working. Savings grow, but prices grow faster. Housing feels further away. Monthly costs take up more income. The same habits now require more effort just to maintain the same position. There was no sudden failure. The rules changed while the habits didn't. It's like using an old map in a city that keeps rebuilding itself. Every step feels familiar, yet the destination drifts further away. That's what most people miss. Consistency only creates progress if the system stays the same. When it doesn't, repeating the same behavior quietly moves you backward, even while it still feels responsible. I look at money through structure, not motivation. How everyday habits interact with inflation, leverage time, and compounding, and how choices that feel safe early can quietly create long-term drag. If you're new here, I'm Alex. Today, we'll examine a set of financial habits that look responsible on the surface, but consistently produce this slow drift. Not to shame them, but to understand why they stop working, and what actually changes when the rules do. Let's begin with the habit almost everyone is praised for first. Habit 1, saving with no end goal. Saving feels responsible because nothing breaks right away. You move money into a separate account, watch the balance grow, and tell yourself you're being disciplined. On the surface, it looks like progress, but time changes the meaning of that number. $10,000 set aside a decade ago, left in cash. Earning nothing doesn't buy what it used to. After years of inflation, that same balance has the purchasing power of roughly $7,500. No bad decision was made. No emergency happened. The loss was quiet. This is why the habit survives so long. In the first few years, nothing feels wrong. Prices creep up slowly. Rent edges higher. Groceries cost a bit more. Your savings balance still looks the same, so the signal never arrives. Then somewhere around year 8 or 10, the gap becomes obvious. Homes feel further away. Monthly costs feel heavier. The lifestyle you assumed was covered suddenly isn't. The problem was never saving. It was stopping there. While cash sits still, assets move. Prices reprice upward. Entry points drift away. Saving without a destination feels like motion because the number grows, but wealth isn't about the number. It's about what that number can become before time quietly works against it. This is where people think they're being cautious when they're actually standing still in a system that never does. Habit 2, treating income as the end goal. A paycheck feels like progress because it solves problems immediately. Bills get paid. Stress drops. Stability returns. That relief trains behavior. You start organizing decisions around protecting the next deposit. Over time, income becomes the finish line instead of the fuel. Raises feel like wins, even when costs quietly rise to meet them. The workday stretches, responsibility increases, yet the ceiling stays in place. Wages move in steps. Expenses move continuously. This is the trap. Income is linear. It resets every month. Miss one paycheck, and the system shakes. You're earning more than your parents did, but the lifestyle doesn't feel lighter. Housing absorbs the difference. Healthcare claims a share. Time becomes scarcer. Ownership behaves differently. Assets don't care how many hours you worked last week. They compound without permission. They scale without overtime. While income asks you to show up again tomorrow, assets keep working through weekends, downturns, and quiet months. People say they want higher pay, but what they're really chasing is breathing room. The mistake is assuming income creates that room by itself. It doesn't. It only delays the pressure. When income becomes the goal, decisions shrink. Risk feels expensive. Options narrow. The moment your paycheck becomes something you can't afford to lose, it stops being freedom and starts being leverage, just not in your favor. The shift doesn't require earning less. It requires asking a different question about what your money is actually building while you're busy earning it. A moment of orientation. Pause for a moment and imagine this specific shift. Your income goes up next month, not a windfall. Just enough to matter. After bills, you have a few $100s more than before. What's your first instinct? Option A, upgrade something. A nicer place, a better car, a lifestyle change that feels deserved. Option B, keep everything the same and let the cash pile up untouched because safety feels like progress. Option C, use leverage carefully. Put the money towards something that moves faster than cash alone could. None of these choices is wrong, but each one reveals what you're trying to protect. Option A prioritizes comfort. Option B prioritizes control. Option C prioritizes timing. Most people think this is a personality trait. It isn't. It's a response to how pressure feels in your life right now. And that response quietly determines whether money makes you calmer or simply keeps you busy. Hold on to which option felt most natural, because the next habit we're about to examine explains why avoiding one particular tool can feel safe in the short term, while quietly making everything more expensive over time. Habit 3, lifestyle upgrades with income. Lifestyle upgrades feel earned. You get a raise, you move to a nicer place, the car gets newer, subscriptions multiply, nothing reckless happens. You're still paying everything on time. From the outside, it looks like progress. The problem is what changes underneath. Every upgrade quietly raises the minimum income required to feel okay. Not to feel rich, just to feel stable. The first month in a nicer apartment feels great. By month 3, it's normal. By month 6, it's invisible. But the higher payment never fades. This is how raises disappear without being wasted. You didn't overspend. You recalibrated your baseline. Now the job isn't building momentum, it's holding the line. A bad month becomes stressful. A career change feels impossible. A risk with upside suddenly looks irresponsible. The danger isn't spending more, it's locking in spending before capacity is built. When income rises faster than resilience, flexibility shrinks. You gain comfort but lose options. There's a simple contrast most people miss. If you freeze your lifestyle for 12 months after a raise, something unusual happens. Cash accumulates, buffers form, assets begin to stack, optionality appears. That pause doesn't feel like success. It feels boring. But boring is often the signal that pressure is leaving the system. And once pressure drops, better decisions finally become available. Habit 4, avoiding all debt. Avoiding debt feels safe because it removes anxiety. No payments, no interest, no obligation hanging over your head. For many people, that instinct is justified. Bad debt traps them. Payments consume cash flow. Stress becomes permanent. But there's a difference between dangerous debt and productive debt, and the system treats them very differently. Houses are bought with debt. Businesses scale with debt. Governments run on debt. Even banks operate almost entirely on borrowed money. The structure itself is built around leverage. When you avoid all debt, you don't opt out of risk. You opt out of timing. While your saving and waiting assets are being bought earlier by others, prices are locked in lower. Inflation works in their favor. Meanwhile, cash buyers arrive later, facing higher entry points with no leverage to soften the cost. This is how the gap forms, not because one group is reckless, but because one group uses the system as designed. Debt isn't the enemy. Debt that costs more than it produces is. A mortgage at a reasonable rate can be a tool. So can business credit or investment leverage when paired with cash flow. The mistake is treating all debt as poison instead of asking a harder question: does this obligation expand future capacity or shrink it? Choosing zero debt isn't neutral. In a leveraged system, it's a decision to play without one of the main tools while still paying the price created by those who do. Habit 5, playing defense only. Playing defense feels wise because it avoids obvious mistakes. You budget carefully. You delay decisions. You choose the safest option whenever there's uncertainty. Nothing blows up. And that's exactly why this habit lasts. Defense protects what you already have, but it doesn't create what you don't. Costs don't wait for confidence. Housing rises, healthcare rises, education rises. Time itself becomes more expensive every year. Even if you never make a mistake, the environment keeps moving. This is where people get confused. They did everything carefully. They avoided risk. They stayed disciplined. And yet, the distance between effort and outcome keeps growing. The system wasn't punishing them. It was simply compounding without them. Risk avoidance has a hidden cost. By treating every uncertain move as a threat, you end up standing still while the baseline advances. Career changes get postponed. Side projects never start. Capital stays idle. Nothing goes wrong, but nothing accelerates either. Winning isn't about eliminating risk. It's about choosing which risks are worth carrying early while the downside is survivable. Defense buys time. That time only matters if it's used to build offense. When defense becomes the destination instead of the bridge, you don't lose suddenly. You drift. Quietly, predictably. And by the time it's visible, the catch-up cost is far higher than the original risk ever was. Habit 6. Waiting for certainty. Waiting feels responsible. You don't rush. You don't guess. You tell yourself you're being patient until the picture becomes clear. From the outside, it looks like discipline. But in systems that compound certainty is expensive. By the time something feels safe, the price has already adjusted. The upside was paid to whoever moved, while the outcome was still unclear. You see this pattern everywhere. Housing looks risky, then suddenly unaffordable. Markets feel volatile, then suddenly fully priced. Careers feel uncertain, then suddenly competitive. When the path is foggy, access is open. When the path is obvious, access is restricted. This is the trap. People don't miss opportunities because they're wrong. They miss them because they waited to feel comfortable. Early on, being late costs a little. Later, it prices you out completely. Certainty arrives after advantage has already been extracted. That's why it feels calm. The risk has been transferred to the buyer who arrived last. This doesn't mean moving blindly. It means recognizing that hesitation has a cost just like mistakes do. Inaction compounds quietly the same way inflation does. At first, the delay seems harmless. Over time, it hardens into a permanent gap. Habit 7. Chasing discounts instead of buying power. Saving money feels productive because it creates small visible wins. You find a cheaper option. You wait for a sale. You compare prices until you feel smart about the decision. Nothing wrong happens, so the habit reinforces itself. The cost shows up somewhere else. Time gets spent hunting for marginal savings instead of increasing what an hour of your effort is worth. 2 hours of research to save $15 feels responsible until you zoom out. That's trading your most limited resource for the smallest return available. This is how low-leverage thinking sneaks in. You optimize expenses endlessly while income potential stays flat. There's a hard ceiling on how much you can cut. There's no ceiling on how much you can earn, but that path feels less certain, so it gets postponed. People who pull ahead don't ignore costs. They just understand the order of operations. First, raise capacity. Then efficiency matters. Doing it in reverse keeps you busy without moving the needle. Here's the quiet contrast. One person spends months perfecting frugality. Another spends the same time learning a skill, building a side project, or positioning for a higher leverage role. Both look disciplined. Only one compounds. Discounts reduce spending once. Buying power reshapes every future decision. When time is invested in leverage instead of savings, tricks, prices stop feeling like the main problem. And that shift changes how every dollar works from that point forward. Habit 8. Taking advice from the wrong game. Advice always sounds neutral, but it never is. It's shaped by the game the person giving it has been playing. Someone who optimized for stability will warn you about risk. Someone who never owned assets will warn you about leverage. Someone who lived through job loss will prioritize safety above all else. That advice isn't malicious, it's protective. But protection is relative to experience, not possibility. Tell an average person you want to start a business, and the response is predictable. What about your job? What about benefits? What if it fails? That's not business advice, that's employee advice. It's guidance designed to preserve a paycheck, not to build ownership. Most people only recognize risks they've personally felt. They've experienced bills, layoffs, debt stress recessions. They haven't experienced compounding equity growth or asset-backed flexibility. So those outcomes don't register as real options. This creates an invisible ceiling. When someone can't imagine a path, they assume it doesn't exist. And if you accept advice from a game you're not trying to win, you inherit its limits without realizing it. The solution isn't ignoring others, it's filtering input. Ask one simple question before accepting guidance: what outcome was this strategy designed to protect? Because advice that keeps one person safe can quietly keep another person small. And once you start listening through that lens, a lot of well-meaning warnings reveal exactly who they're meant to serve. Key takeaways. These habits don't fail loudly. That's why they survive. Each one looks responsible in isolation, yet together they create a system that resists momentum. Saving without direction feels safe until purchasing power erodes. Income feels stabilizing until it becomes the ceiling. Lifestyle upgrades feel earned until flexibility disappears. Avoiding debt feels cautious until timing works against you. Playing defense feels smart until the environment outruns it. Waiting for certainty feels disciplined until access closes. Chasing discounts feels efficient until time becomes the hidden cost. And advice meant to protect someone else's game quietly limits yours. The common thread isn't effort or intelligence. It's misalignment. Money works best when it's assigned a role beyond comfort and reassurance. Financial resilience comes from reducing fragility while building capacity at the same time. If this way of looking at money feels familiar, you're not behind. You're becoming more precise. And precision is what quietly separates people who tread water from those who gain margin over time.